Chapter 11. The boy stood there, calm and unshaken, facing down this beast like he was born to it. I couldn't move or breathe. The creature snarled and turned towards the boy. Cedric took a step forward, his features reminiscent of a corpse risen from the grave. His eyes were now reflecting off the headlights like the eyes of a dog or deer, locked onto the creature towering over him. The creature snarled louder, slashing its twisted claws together with a sickening, bone-grating sound that cut through the air. Its eyes locked onto Cedric's small figure with an intensity that radiated pure hatred, a guttural rumble rising from somewhere deep in its hollow chest, as if recognizing in this boy something innately dangerous, something to be feared. Cedric stepped closer, speaking a command I clearly heard over the night air. "Go home." For a moment, the creature hesitated, the bones and joints in its neck jerking unnaturally, causing its head to tilt at a grotesque angle as it appeared to shudder, as if repelled by the words. Then, with a breath that stank of decay and rot, it began to choke out what sounded like words. But they were in a language I had never heard before, a low, ancient rumble that vibrated with defiance, sending tremors through the air. Its guttural voice cracked and snarled in protest, its jaws quivering with a rage I couldn't even begin to understand. But I could grasp the fact that it didn't agree with Cedric's command. Not one bit. "So be it," Cedric murmured, his tone almost disappointed. And then his eyes flashed with a sudden predatory glint. The creature screeched, a sharp, horrible sound that pierced through the trees. It was at that moment Cedric began to change. All of a sudden, he folded in on himself, like something inside him was too heavy to carry. I could hear his bones creaking. Then, with a horrifying crack, his arms sagged, stretching way too far, too long, joints unhinging as if they'd been waiting to come loose. I heard things give way inside him, pops, wet cracks, as his limbs slipped out of place. I saw fingers stretched thin, bones pushing forward beneath the skin, splitting their shape until they hooked into long, horrid talons that scraped against the road. His spine drew upward in a slow, slick pull, each inch deliberate, like something inside him was unfolding itself. His chest caved, then widened, ribs pressing against skin that looked too tight to hold them. His legs lengthened with a stagger, knees bending the wrong way for a second, before snapping back into something worse, as if something else was stepping through him, wearing what was left. The night then erupted into chaos as this thing, who was once Cedric and the creature, engaged into a feral dogfight. It went to lunge at him at an impossible speed, but Cedric was faster. He dropped to all fours, limbs falling under him like some twisted insect, skittering to the side with an unnatural speed. His head stayed focused on the creature, eyes locked in a cold, calculating stare as he crawled, spine bending and shifting and snapping with each movement. I couldn't tear my eyes away, my stomach turning as I watched him move, fluid yet erratic, like a spider circling its prey. It was as if every shred of humanity in him had been drained, leaving behind something feral and animalistic. The creature lunged again, slashing wildly, but Cedric darted around it, crawling faster than my eyes could track, twisting and lunging behind the monster. The creature wheeled around, claws flashing in the headlights, swinging for him, but Cedric caught the beast's wrist with an unnatural strength, twisting it back, making it howl. And he drove those vicious claws straight into the creature's neck. The beast let out a screech of pure agony, black blood pouring down its torso, staining the ground. Before I could even comprehend what I was seeing, a shadow erupted from the trees, another massive swarm of those bat-like entities, carrying pieces of body parts, spilling out of the fog like a dark river of wings. They surged forward into the cone's headlights, merging and folding, not gradually as Cedric had done, but almost instantly. It struck the ground and rose in the same breath, unfolding into something tall and starved, another horrid creature much like what Cedric had become, something driven by a hunger just as wild as the creature before him. There was a grotesque resemblance in its form, though. For a split second, I thought I recognized this thing as Edward. Within seconds of forming, he violently threw himself into the air, landing on the creature's head like a predator, wrapping his claws around its head and slashing violently at its face. His movement was a blur, each swipe punctuated by wet, tearing sounds as he ripped at its leathery skin. The creature roared in fury, its stretched out fingers closing around Edward's shoulders with a violent, effortless twist. It tore him off, hurling across the road where he landed in a crouch, snarling like a beast, ready to attack again. The monster swung around, seizing Cedric by the head, and with a horrifying strength, it viciously whipped him into a nearby tree. The impact was bone-shaking, the tree itself shuddering, nearly snapping in half from the force. Cedric slumped for a moment, then, with inhuman resilience, lifted himself back up, a snarl twisting his face, his eyes blazing as he prepared to charge again. But before the creature could make another move, yet another massive winged entity surged out of the forest. These things didn't soar, they slithered along the ground, moving almost like a shadow, silent and sinister. They gathered behind the creature, flowing upward like an oil slick over its back. And then they began to shift, the shape twisting and solidifying, forming into yet another withered creature, whom I could almost recognize from the portraits. Was Marlowe. His eyes, too, were glowing in inhuman white light. He grabbed hold of the creature's arm, twisting it with a sickening crack, bending it to full 90 degrees. The creature let out a guttural howl of agony, its body writhing before it managed to hurl Marlowe away, sending him skidding across the pavement with a trail of blood from the friction. Now it was 3 against 1, but the monster was undeterred, its rage only intensifying. I could see the fury churning in its eyes, but there was something else, almost like apprehension. But then, through the rearview mirror, I saw her, a small girl in a white dress drifting out of the fog like a ghost. Her head was tilted, eyes unblinking, and for one horrifying moment, she looked almost dazed, like she didn't belong in this scene at all. Then, in that moment, she exploded into a terrifying sprint. She was heading straight for us. My stomach dropped. No, toward the creature, and she was impossibly fast. My brain struggled to keep up. I blinked, and she was suddenly there, feet bare, toes barely grazing the ground, that white dress billowing as she shot toward the creature. Elizabeth. It was Elizabeth. Before I could comprehend what was happening, she vaulted onto the roof of the car, and the entire vehicle shook with the force. Above me, I heard her claws scraping over the metal, and through the holes the creature had slashed into previously, I could see her face. Only, it was far from the youthful, gentle face I was met with in the porch. Her long black hair was no longer the smooth, flowing curtain I remembered, but a wild, tangled mess, strands plastered across her face, as if drenched in something thick and dark. It hung in twisted clumps that framed her face, hiding parts of it in shadows, only to reveal glimpses of something unearthly beneath. It was like staring at death itself, like hunger had found a shape and forced it into what used to be human, like something had dragged a soul through rotten darkness, hollowed it out, and left behind only the need to devour. Yet somehow, the fact that this grotesque, predatory face belonging to the small girl I'd once known made it all the more horrifying. I was frozen. We were helpless. as her face contorted, her neck twisting in an almost impossible angle until her gaze was straight down on us. Then, her mouth cracked open, far wider than any human jaw could possibly manage, producing a blood-curdling, inhuman screech that rattled through my bones and echoed through the forest around us. The sheer power of the sound made me feel small, like prey. The creature froze, looking up at her, its eyes narrowing. Then, in a slithering insect-like motion, she slid off the car, her limbs moving in jerking, unnatural angles as she crept across the ground, her elongated fingers gripping the concrete like a spider as she crawled forward, her body twisting and contorting, her head cocked in that inhuman tilt. Without hesitation, she joined the others in the fray, and the scene before my eyes transformed into a spectacle of feral chaos. In a sudden flurry, the children attacked, converging on the creature from all sides. Elizabeth scuttled up the nearest tree, her movements erratic and spider-like as she climbed, her hands and feet seeming to grip the bark with an impossible strength. She darted up the trunk, her white dress fluttering against the rough bark, her form barely a blur before she launched herself off the tree with a horrifying shriek. She flew at the creature, landing squarely on its back, her claws digging into its shoulders as she raked her fangs down its neck, hissing and snarling with each brutal swipe. She was a predator, just like her brothers. Marlowe darted in next, his movements like a series of blurs as he skittered, the creature's attempts to swipe at him, his body's flowing around each attack. He twisted behind it, grabbing hold of its armor, twisting it again, grinding the bone with an inhuman strength that sent another howl ripping from the creature's throat. It swung around, but Cedric darted low to the ground, skittering around the creature's legs like a crab, clawing at its ankles with sharp, slicing movements. Then Edward lunged forward, his teeth bared in a feral snarl as he sank his fangs into the creature's shoulder, tearing at its flesh while his hands clawed at its neck. The creature screamed, managing to shake Edward off, but not before without losing a chunk of flesh that now dripped dark, thick blood onto the road. Their movements were relentless, each one more monstrous than the last. They climbed and leapt from the trees, using the trunks and branches as vantage points to dive onto the creature, ripping and clawing. The air was filled with their shrieks and the monster's enraged bellows, an inhuman cacophony that left me paralyzed. It was no longer a fight between children and a monster. These were otherworldly beasts, battling in the moonlight, with a ferocity that blurred the line between human and devil. The fight was at a fever pitch. The sound of claws tearing flesh and snow was echoing through the fog-drenched forest, when a sudden hush fell over everything, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. The Dralok children, once ravenous and unhinged, froze in unison, their heads snapped toward the trees, expressions turning cold and disciplined, as though they sensed a presence far greater than themselves. One by one, they began backing away from the creature, fading into the shadows beneath the tree line. Yet even as their bodies disappeared into the murky darkness, their eyes remained. 4 pairs of glowing white feral eyes floated like spectral lanterns within the fog, each gaze unblinking, fixed on the clearing with an unnatural, unwavering intensity. The faintest outlines of their forms were barely visible against the blackness, but those eyes stayed sharp, watching with a strange mixture of reverence and terror. Then, a cold wind stirred from deep within the woods, sweeping out across the road. It was more than a mere breeze, like the forest itself exhaling a low, frozen breath that sank into every pore, chilling skin and bone. The wind rushed past me, Darwin and Lila in the car, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that was almost tangible. The creature felt it too. Its twisted, monstrous form went rigid, claws curling as it turned to face the tree line, where the suppressive chill had come from. And then, from the shadows of the forest floor, a ripple motion emerged. The winged creatures, hundreds of them, flooding from the depths of the trees. They didn't flit or flutter through the air. Instead, they hugged the ground, their wings brushing against the damp earth as they moved, almost like a living carpet. They slithered and flowed in an eerie, unnatural way, spreading out across the forest floor like a dark tide until the entire ground was alive with this undulating mass of wings and flesh, their tiny eyes gleaming like pinpoints of darkness. They pulled together, gathering in the center of the clearing, swirling faster and faster as they rose from the ground. Wings beat in chaotic rhythm, and the black mass coalesced, pulling together like a storm cloud folding in on itself. Slowly, almost ceremonially, they moved and took shape, each wing fusing into place, until what remained was no an animalistic swarm, but a tall, inhuman figure. It stood taller than the rest of the Dralok children, almost leveling with the creature. Its frame stretched and thinned to something that looked as if it had outlived its own structure. Where the others were more starved, this one was eroded, flesh drawn tight in places and almost falling off in others, like centuries had been gnawing at the thing slowly. Its eyes weren't reflecting off the headlights like the others. They burned, two hollow lights that cut through the fog like a cold focus. Yet through the decaying flesh, I had no doubt that this was Theron. The creature let out a slow hiss, backing up slightly as it took in this new, formidable presence. Yet it held its ground, snarling, confusion and fury twisting its misshapen features. Then, in a voice thick and grating, like rock grinding against rock, it tried to speak again, issuing what sounded like a warning, or perhaps a challenge in that same unknown guttural language it had used before. Theron listened, unperturbed, his jaw unhinged, hanging like the mouth of a starving wolf, and he responded in the same arcane tongue, his tone smooth yet laced with an underlying authority that resonated through the clearing. His words sounded ancient, each syllable like a cold blade slicing through the fog-laden air, filling the clearing with a grim tension that was almost suffocating. The creature's confidence visibly faltered, its eyes darting between Theron and the listening spectral glow of the children's eyes in the darkness. It understood now. This was not a battle it could win. A shadow of fear crept into its twisted expression, and with one last hate-filled look at Theron, it threw its head back and released an unholy, spine-chilling screech that seemed to pierce the very fabric of the night itself. It reverberated through the trees, carrying its rage, its frustration, and its defeat. Then, without another glance, it turned and bounded off into the forest, its powerful limbs propelling it into the fog until it was swallowed by darkness, leaving only the faint echoes of its unnatural scream. The silence that followed was deafening. Theron stood motionless, eyes still fixed on the spot where the creature had disappeared. Slowly, he turned his gaze to us. I watched in horror as his eyes met mine through the cracked glass of the windshield. And in that moment, I felt like I was the prey. The children, still lurking in the shadows, emerged from the darkness, stepping back into the clearing with lowered heads, like loyal wolves awaiting their alpha's command. Their bodies began to draw back in on themselves with quiet, sickening reluctance, limbs shortening, joints settling, claws receding, as if the shape of a person was something they had to force themselves back into. But under the headlights, there was no mistaking it now. Even in their human forms, they didn't look alive, just thin, withered frames, skin touched by a decay that hadn't finished its work. Not people. just something wearing what was left of them. But something in me finally snapped, and I lurched forward, trying to force my foot down on the accelerator, anything to break free. My fingers had barely brushed the gear shift when an icy hand clamped around my arm. It wasn't just cold, it was freezing, like it sucked the warmth straight out of my skin, and the strength behind it. It was like being caught in an iron vise. Before I could even gasp, I was yanked out of the car with a force that tore me out of my seat and threw me onto the road. Pain shot through my side as I hit the asphalt hard, and before I could scramble up, I saw Lila and Darwin beside me, also sprawled out and groaning, just as dazed. I looked up to see Edward standing there, his hand still extended from the throat, his eyes an unfeeling, hungry white. We lay there, helpless, facing the Dralok family as they loomed over us. Theron was still, his gaze somehow calm yet pitiless, like he was weighing our lives with nothing more than the faintest flicker of interest. Elizabeth stood off to the side, her head tilted as if she watched us like a cat watches a mouse. Silent and predatory. Marlowe broke the silence first. "They've seen too much," he said, his voice as cold and precise as the edge of a knife. His words dripped with contempt, but his tone was almost poetic, each word flowing in that unsettling, elegant way they all spoke. "It would be a kindness to end them here." He glanced at Theron, then at Edward, a flicker of dark amusement in his eyes. Darwin's voice was breaking with desperation as he begged, "Please, don't. Please, we didn't know. We were only trying." Suddenly, Edward's voice shattered through the night like a whip crack. The word hit like a hammer, a shuddering echo that froze all movement. There was something inhuman layered beneath his voice, deeper, darker, like some ancient beast speaking through him, a sound that made the air itself feel like it recoiled. Darwin fell silent, his pleas dying in his throat as Edward stepped closer, his unholy gaze piercing through the darkness. He looked at Darwin with something between contempt and fury, like he was staring down at a stain. Edward's voice was low, but every word was dripping with a wrath that made me want to shrink back. "Do you even begin to understand what you've done?" His eyes moved from Darwin, then to Lila, and me. "What you have brought into this world, the ruin it will bring. Do you know how much blood will be spilled because of you? How many lives will be dragged into the abyss? And you..." He looked down at Darwin with open disdain. "You have the gall to beg." The weight of his words pressed down like a suffocating force, and he drew closer, his monstrous features slithering back into his gaze. "Curiosity," he began, the words dripping with scorn. "An everlasting sickness that has plagued the human race since the beginning." A chill ran through me as his gaze bored into mine, each word as sharp as glass. "Your kind," he continued, "has always toyed with the abyss. You shout into it, mock it, desperate to know if anything stirs within its depths, calling out for something far beyond you. And when that darkness looks back, when something answers that you could never fathom, something immeasurably older and far more ruthless, you fall to your knees, you beg for mercy." He tilted his head, almost curious, though his stare was anything but kind.
It's the oldest folly of your kind, to believe that everything waits to be understood, that curiosity is your right, but you never consider the price. Now there is a price to pay.
Edward's voice softened, chilling in its finality.
You brought it upon yourselves, but don't you dare look to us for mercy, not when it is mercy you have already mocked.
Cedric's voice, quiet but unwavering, broke the thick silence.
We should spare them,
He said, his tone softened yet insistent. He spoke with the calm reassurance of someone who'd seen far too much, who'd wrestled with his own nature more times than he can count. Edward's glare cut through him.
Stay out of this, Cedric,
He growled, his voice rumbling with that same dark undertone, almost as if another presence lives within his words. But then, Elizabeth's voice sliced through the tension like a blade.
Let him speak,
She demanded, her voice resonating with that eerie duality, like two beings speaking as one, old and inhuman. Cedric turned back to us, his eyes softened, taking on that same childlike innocence he had when I first encountered him. Yet now, his face was tinged with sorrow, as if he was looking upon the condemned.
I warned you,
He stated, his words carrying a note of melancholy.
I told you to leave, to let this town fade into the shadows where it belongs. I tried to give you the chance to escape from what you did not understand.
He paused, studying our faces, letting the weight of his words settle over them.
But I remember the pull of curiosity, how it grips the human mind. It tricks you into believing you can grasp the edges of things beyond you, that you can walk into darkness and come out unscathed.
His gaze flickered, a ghost of pity crossing his face.
You didn't know what you were calling to, what would answer.
He looked down at me, his expression almost unreadable.
If we were to let them walk away,
He continued,
it cannot be without consequence. They must carry a reminder, the reminder that if their curiosity leads them back to the abyss, they are wise enough not to call to it again.
His gaze turned hard, his voice almost reverent in its measured tone.
We should take their tongues, so they can never recount what they have seen. And if they find a way, if a single word escapes them of what they have seen, then we shall take their hearts, a permanent cure for their ignorance. They don't deserve to walk away.
Elizabeth's voice sliced through the quiet like a blade, her eyes narrowing down on us with disdain. She turned her gaze toward Theron, almost pleading, but with an edge of resentment.
Father,
She continued, her tone both bitter and mocking.
why do we waste our words on these creatures?
Her eyes skimmed over us with barely concealed disgust.
Each breath they draw is another second wasted, another lesson unlearned. They have no concept of the scale of their actions.
Her words dripped with contempt, as if each one tasted bitter.
Perhaps in death, they can get a taste for it.
Theron's deep, menacing voice rose, layered with an undertone so monstrous it seemed to reverberate through the very air, heavier, colder, and far darker than the rest.
You will do no such thing.
He commanded, each word edged with a weight that demanded silence.
But, Father,
Elizabeth's defiance faltered, her words cutting short as his dark, piercing gaze fell upon her. Theron held her stare, his expression a warning sharper than any words.
enough.
He said, his voice low, yet the power in it was enough to make even the shadows around him recoil, as if the very forest feared his presence. His eyes, now glinting in the dim light, shifted slowly toward us. Their presence lingered before him as he spoke.
These three,
He said with an unyielding finality,
have opened a door none of you fully comprehend.
He paused, letting the weight of his words fall upon all of them.
To kill them would mean taking from him the only tether he has, the only thing he now craves above all.
Elizabeth drew in a sharp breath, and Cedric's gaze flickered with understanding, though a faint tremor ran through his frame. Theron continued, his voice more severe.
They are the first he has seen in over a century, the first scent he tasted, the first he has known since the shadows he was cast into. In their presence, he found his freedom.
He glanced at each of us, as if marking us in that freedom.
These three,
He went on, the voice rumbling with restrained fury,
are no longer simple prey. They are his reminders of pain, and the hatred that drives him will not rest with their deaths.
He let this settle for a moment before adding with a grim resolve,
He will follow them. He will be drawn to them again and again, not out of hunger, but out of hatred.
His eyes flashed with a terrible understanding, and his children hung on every word.
That hatred, his lust for suffering, if these three are taken from it, that rage will find its way into this world without restraint. He will slaughter. He will tear through everything in his path to find them again. We must let them live, as they are his anchors, and only by keeping them alive do we hold any chance of stopping what they have released.
Darwin's voice trembled, and he forced the words out through clenched teeth, his face pale but flushed with fear. What do you mean we're an anchor? And why do you call that thing he? His red-rimmed eyes darted from one corpse face to the next, looking for something human among them. Theron's gaze hardened as he turned toward Darwin, his ancient eyes lingering over each of us, one by one, as though appraising our place in this unfolding nightmare. His face was unreadable, yet there was a haunting weight in his expression. He looked slowly at his so-called children scattered throughout the shadows, each watching with expressions ranging from reverence to apprehension. Finally, he turned back, leveling a steady look back at us, with a measured tone, calm yet laced with a restrained intensity. He spoke.
I suppose you do deserve a explanation.
He began.
The creature you released, He is of our kind, yes, yet older by far, from a time closer to the world's first breath than to your own.
His words rolled out slowly, deliberate, as if even the air around him dared not to rush out.
We call him Baal.
As he spoke those words, the air around us seemed to grow colder, as if the very forest shuddered in the mention of his name.
He is one of, if not the first of our kind, an ancient predator, a relentless force that has survived countless lifetimes, and is a deity born of pure hunger, a deity who has not eaten in over a century. As you would imagine, his hunger will be unlike anything your human minds could fathom.
Theron's gaze darkened, glancing away for a moment, as if pulled into the depths of memory.
It is he who crafted us, who brought forth our curse and our strength. Without Baal, we would cease to exist. He is the reason we are what we are. In the oldest sense of the word, he is our maker.
The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut, the eerie calm in his voice coiling around me. My throat felt dry. My heartbeat was hammering loud enough that I could feel its pulsing in my ears. My voice came out roughly, barely more than a whisper at first, my mind grappling with the impossible. What is your kind? The words scraped out of me, raw, but I pushed on, feeling the terror dig into my bones. What the hell are you? I barely recognized my own voice. It was shaky, unsteady, a mix of horror and desperation. Every instinct was screaming to run, but I needed to know. I needed to hear it from him. His eyes flickered between us, and with a quiet, almost solemn tone, he began.
There was a time when I was like you, when we were all like you. We had families, ambitions, and the same petty dreams, struggling to create meaning out of brief, fragile lives.
His voice held a trace of something bitter, an emotion he had long buried.
There was a time where men listened when I spoke, when my name held weight, when bent to my command.
Theron paused, his expression shifting, the flicker of his memories evident in the shadows under his eyes.
I built something that was meant to endure, influence, legacy, a place that would outlast me.
His voice grew tense, his face tight with an anger that seemed as old as time.
But time does not honor such things. It erodes them, as it does the man himself.
His gaze met the faint glow of the moonlight, revealing his pale, hard skin.
So, with what little life I had left, I dedicated myself to finding an answer. I sought it in knowledge, in shadows where others dared not tread, and just as you have today, I called into the abyss.
His words were barely above a whisper, the eerie calmness in them somehow more unsettling than any shout.
I called out to whatever might hear, and I looked deep into the dark, until, at last, something looked back.
The forest seemed to grow stiller, as though the very trees were leaning in to listen.
I struck a pact with that darkness.
Theron said, his voice a quiet rumble.
In return for a life unbound by time. A life that would endure where others would crumb. I offered something in exchange, and all it asked was to be set free.
He glanced over his shoulder, the shadows playing tricks across his face as he continued.
I released it, and from that day forward, I was no longer alone. The darkness followed me wherever I went, its presence heavy, lingering just out of sight. It was always near.
He glanced over at the others still standing just behind him, their eyes still glowing an unearthly white.
In time, I found others, not so different from what I had been, adrift, diminished, already half claimed by despair. I offered them release from that slow erosion, a life no longer bound to the inevitable, nearing a subject to the quiet indignity of being forgotten.
He fixed his unnatural gaze at us, his voice low and unyielding.
And now, here we stand. We are not what we once were, yet we are more than what we could ever have become. We are not men, nor are we ghosts. We walk among you, but we are not one of you. What you see are only the parts of us that can wear flesh. What lies beneath is something far older, something not meant for human sight. Our flesh clings to what you might call life, only so long as we consume what sustains us. Denied that.
He leaned closer, his eyes glinting with an unsettling hunger, as if daring us to understand.
Our human shapes will fade. We become the very embodiment of agony and need, a creature of endless, insatiable hunger.
His gaze darkened, his voice slipping to a cold murmur, as if the words themselves might summon the horror he spoke of.
A dark appetite flows within our veins, a deadly evil that demands its due. Deny it what it craves, and it will begin to claw its way to the surface, overtaking us piece by piece. If we do not satisfy it, it will take us from everything, until we are nothing than hollow, ravenous shells, driven by a single unrelenting urge, to consume, to destroy.
A hunger? For what? Lila's voice trembled, but curiosity pushed the words out, her question lingering in the tense silence. For a moment, the family stayed quiet. They glanced at each other, a silence, unspoken exchange passing between them, an understanding that we could only watch in muted horror. Then, from the edge of the gathering, Cedric's voice, soft, drifted through the stillness.
Blood.
The second Cedric uttered that single word, everything snapped into place. Every suspicion I tried to push aside, every horror I tried to rationalize, came crashing down, and with it came the crushing realization of what stood before me. I'd brushed against the edge of an unseen world, a world I was never meant to know, and now the truth bared itself before me, unavoidable and unmerciful. These were not people. From day one, they never were. They were something far older, something that had long discarded the mortal constraints of flesh and bone, something that had bent the very laws of nature to their will and spat in the face of death itself. They had played God, a twisted entity that preyed on those oblivious to their presence, devouring the living each time the sun sinks below the horizon, who dwelt and thrived in shadows that no mortal eye could pierce. The realization slipped from my lips, barely more than a whisper, but it was enough to break the tension like a shattering glass. You're vampires. Silence fell, cold and infinite. The word felt absurd the moment it left my mouth, like I'd taken a knife to an ocean, trying to carve out something small and simple from the vastness that loomed before me. The family exchanged a look, their expressions unreadable. It was somewhere between amusement and pity, like they were watching a child struggle to piece together a riddle far beyond him. Elizabeth was the first to react, her voice low, cutting through me like a tremor.
Is that what you think we are?
She murmured, leaning in close, her unholy gaze now fixed on me with an eerie intensity.
Something small enough to be written down. Something you can fold into a story and forget when the lights turn on.
A chill wound its way through me as her words sank in. She spoke slowly, her voice dripping with something that was neither contempt nor mercy, but something in between. Something like a memory laced with venom.
Your kind has always needed to name what you fear, as if creating a word could cage it.
Theron's gaze swept across us, lingering in a way that made each of us feel small and exposed. His voice, weighted and low, took on a kind of candorness, each word carrying its own echo.
Centuries of fear and fascination have clothed us in many names, titles you can grasp onto in the dark.
He paused, eyes glinting as if savoring the memory.
All these words you conjure, you speak them as though they could capture what we are.
He tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly.
But what we are does not fit inside a name.
His words lingered like the fog around us before continuing.
With every bygone era, your kind invents new words, new myths. You refine the legend, adapt it to suit your fears, to understand the unknowable.
His mouth curved into a slight, chilling smile.
But these names, they are no more than charms to the fearful. They keep the monster contained in your stories, in your minds.
His gaze hardened, pinning each of us in place.
What we are inside exists beyond any feeble names you conjure. Strip away the legends, and what remains is far older than any name you can utter.
Standing there in the cold grip of the forest, I still couldn't feel my legs, the weight of everything crushing me as I stared up at Theron. I was half sure that at any moment he'd end this strange mercy, that he'd lift a hand and my life would cease. But he just watched me, like he was waiting for something to sink in, and somehow I found words. Then, whatever you are, I started, my voice rough but steadier than I felt. Why here? You don't stay here. I mean, why every 10 years? Marlowe's eyes slid over to me, dark and unreadable. For a moment, he held my gaze, and I almost caught a glimpse of sadness in his cold, expressionless face.
corruption,
he said, his voice a low, almost used by me. The word landed like a blow, sinking into the darkness that surrounded us. I looked at him, lost, but Edward's voice broke through the silence before I could process it.
Our presence,
Edward said, almost regretfully.
it's disruptive.
His voice was barely above a whisper, but each word dug under my skin like ice.
We are a poison to this world, a parasite. We did not evolve. We do not follow the laws of nature, and so nature cannot embrace us as one of her own.
He looked out to the forest that surrounded us, then to the full moon that had now hit its apex in the sky, growing ominously over all of us.
If we linger in a place too long, slowly it will begin. It will start subtle. The leaves will begin to change, their natural colors giving way and turning black as they curl up and fall. The roots will decay into rots beneath the soil. The animals will know it before anyone, of course. They will grow restless, then sick, drawn by instinct to avoid what they can't understand. And finally, after enough time has passed, the once vibrant land will wither, its vitality drained to the least drop. Trees will stand as silent witnesses, though no life will cling to them. Eventually, the frost will begin to fall, a once beautiful landscape now forsaken by life itself.
I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, my mind belly gasping the implications. But he wasn't finished.
Eventually, we discovered after a few years that this would be the height of it all, and the townsfolk will begin to notice. That is when we move on, leaving nature to heal what little it can in our absence.
Edward's words lingered in the air, the meaning settling deep, and I felt the chill that ran through all of us. How their very presence was like a disease to the land. How they left sickness in their wake if they stayed too long. It struck me all at once, the weight of that, of existing in the world but always apart from it, leaving rot and decay wherever you went. What a miserable way to live, I thought, barely containing the words. A life where every breath, every step, poisoned the ground beneath you. Made a twisted kind of sense, though, if I looked at it in a certain light. If you defy the laws of nature, if you spit in the face of the very order that keeps everything in balance, then why should the world not cast you out? Why wouldn't it reject you, force you to sink back into the shadows from where you came? It was as if nature itself recognized them as something foreign, something twisted from the natural path. Outcasts. Before I could get a word in, Lila murmured, barely more than a whisper, "You don't belong anywhere. That's horrible." Darwin turned to her, his face contorted with disbelief, anger breaking through the fear that had shadowed him in might. He spat out his words, eyes narrowing, as if he could hardly believe what he was hearing. "You what?" he said, his voice rising with each word. "You feel sorry for them?" He looked at each of us, his frustration spilling over, fed by the helplessness of the entire situation. "They chose this, Lila. Every bit of it." He was almost shaking now, his voice roar. "They kill people. They tear lives apart. They are the reason Jack's dead, for fuck's sake. And God knows how many others." As Darwin's words lashed out, scathing and unrelenting, I could only stare. This was Darwin, The same Darwin who never so much as raised his voice when life threw him one obstacle after another, who'd always shrunk back, let things happen to him, stayed in the background where it was safe. And here he was, standing up to this family of inhuman killers. He was looking them in their faces, hurling insult after insult at creatures that could end him with a flick of a wrist. I felt my pulse pounding, watching him, my friend, usually so quiet, now daring to confront the most dangerous predators to ever walk the earth. They were beings that defied every law of nature, things that played by rules we couldn't even begin to understand. The courage, or madness, it took to speak like that, knowing they could snuff him out in a heartbeat. Darwin's voice rose, the anger in his words sharpening with every accusation. Marlowe's eyes glinted from the shadows, his expression tightening. Then, with a suddenness that stole the breath from my lungs, Marlowe moved. He reached out, his long crooked fingers curling around Darwin's neck. They covered the entire span of it, fingers like claws, bony and pale white, lifting him off the ground as he weighed nothing. Darwin's words cut off instantly, choked in his throat, his hands clawing uselessly at Marlowe's grip as his legs kicked, fighting for air. Marlowe's face was a chilling sight in the dim light, eyes casting an eerie, almost spectral glow in the dark. His mouth hung open, slack but deliberate, revealing jagged predatory fangs, each one so sharp and uneven, like shards of shattered bone. His lips pulled back slightly, exposing them fully, the way a wolf's mouth hangs open when it's starving. Eyes fixed on its prey with deadly intent. The look was both calm and ravenous, as if holding Darwin up had stirred something primal just beneath the surface. His lips twisted, that same dark growl rumbling up from somewhere deep in his chest, a sound that seemed to echo through the woods, vibrating in the shadows around us.
Release him.
Theron's voice broke through, level and controlled, but carrying an edge that seems to halt even Marlowe in his tracks.
I won't ask again.
Marlowe's hand unfurled, and Darwin crumpled to the ground, gasping, clutching at his neck, his breaths ragged. Marlowe didn't just let him go. He dropped him forward, the way you'd cast aside something broken and unwanted. Darwin hit the asphalt, coughing, struggling to regain his breath, his face twisted in both fear and anger. Theron's face shifted. Landing on Darwin was something I could possibly only describe as exhaustion, a historic, weathered kind of patience.
You're right,
he said, his voice low and somehow most weary.
You're right to despise what we are, right to recoil from the lives we lead. What we are, it's wrong, in every way you could imagine.
He paused, his gaze sweeping over the rest of us, then back to Darwin.
But know this, we are nothing like Beho.
The words landed with a weight that seemed to pull the very air down around us.
Baal is a thing of pure malice, a creature of endless hunger. He knows only to destroy, to take, to devour, leaving ruin in his wake. We are not your enemy. You were never meant to know us. Despite what we are, we try our best to satisfy our eternal hunger without turning to your kind. Over the years we have learnt to find alternatives, lesser creatures, of animals. They buy us time, keep us tethered to sanity for as long as we can hold out. But it never lasts.
He paused, as though weighing each word with the care of one might give a confession.
If we wait too long, it will consume us from within, until all reason is lost, and all that remains is the unrelenting need for human blood. To fall to that would mean surrendering to the very thing we fight against. So, we linger on this line, sparing as much as your world as we can, taking only when we can no longer deny what we are. When the beast within grows impatient.
Lila's voice broke through the silence, wavering but clear. And when animals aren't enough. She hesitated, the horror of the thought settling over her before she pressed on. You just wait for someone to be alone, and they're gone? Her words hung in the air, each one striking like a challenge. Even as her voice quivered with dread, she couldn't hide the disgust in her tone, or the disbelief in her eyes, as if by speaking she could make the idea feel less real, less monstrous. Theron's gaze was heavy as he met Lila's eyes, her question hanging in the air like a challenge. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but unflinching.
When our choices have ceased. Yes,
He admitted, his voice low.
we endure as long as we can. Creatures of the forest, dull it for a time, but we cannot deny the inevitable. And then, we take care in whom we choose.
He glanced at the others beside him, flicker of regret passing through his expression.
We look for those who have seen many years, those whose lives have already run a long course. It is not mercy, not truly.
He added, the weight of truth lacing his words.
But it is what we can offer to ease the darkness we bring. We try to avoid the young, the untested, those whose lives have just begun.
He stopped, as if the words themselves were too bitter to speak.
In the end, we are thieves of life, stealing what we lack, but we do so with purpose, with care.
Darwin staggered to his feet, his face pale, eyes wide, the fear and desperation clear in his trembling voice. We need to leave right now, he stammered. I'm sorry that this happened, but I swear to you, you'll never hear or see us again. Please, just let us go. We'll leave right now. Theron's eyes glinted with a dark certainty as he stared us down, his expression unreadable, yet heavy with unspoken weight. After a pause, he tilted his head slightly, his voice a murmur edged in finality.
There is no leaving, not anymore.